Living in Sunnyside Estates wasn't where I wanted to live, but the neighborhood was perfect for my commute, and the walking trails provided a perfect setting for Maverick. My service dog, Maverick, is a beautiful golden retriever who helps me through my PTSD attacks after my military overseas. He's wonderfully well worn, always wears his service vest when we go out, and obeys commands perfectly. I know the Americans with Disabilities Act like the back of my hand. It's big when you rely on a service animal. But I never thought I'd have to appeal to federal law to my HOA president. The first time I met Karen Whitfield, she was clutching a clipboard and sported a scowl that seemed permanently etched on her face. She explained she was the president of the HOA in a voice that made me feel like I should be awed. I don't think I had a dog in this area. She spoke to me with slitted eyes, looking down at Maverick standing as motionless as a statue beside me. I explained politely that Maverick was a service dog and not an animal, and therefore exempt from pet policies under federal law. She huffed, muttered something about people always being able to find loopholes, and stalked off. I should have listened to the telltale signs at that time. Over the course of the following weeks, I had received 3 various warnings of supposed violations. My QU inch too tall, hold my mailbox being the wrong color, black, and my trash can openly placed on the street for approximately 45 minutes following collection. Each of the notices bore Karen's fancy script signature, complete with smiley face case that looked more threatening than welcoming. I did not reply to any of these in hopes of keeping low-key the boat, but I felt these petty violations were merely the beginning of things. Then there was the HOA meeting, at which Karen proposed a new regulation requiring all pets, including service animals, to register with the board and show HOA-approved identification. When I objected and stood up that this was a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, she cut me off and said that federal law does not preempt community standards. Some neighbors seemed to be comfortable, but no one uttered a word after the meeting. Karen approached me and whispered, "If you want to be tough, I can be tough too." Her breath smelled of coffee and intimidation. The following weekend, I was having a quiet morning on my porch, with Maverick sleeping at my feet. I was reading the paper when a shadow strode across my lawn. Karen was standing there in her khaki shorts and polo shirt and a spray bottle. "Your dog is violating the new pet ordinance by not wearing the required HOA identification," she uttered loudly enough for those folks down the street to hear. I nicely reminded her that Maverick was a service dog according to federal law and that the HOA couldn't require special identification. Other than I explained that rule hasn't even been officially enforced yet. Her face turned a scary shade of red. "I'm tired of you military types thinking you're superior to the rules," she spat out, heading towards my yard. "If you won't listen, I'll take care of this myself," before I could respond. She pointed her spray bottle at Maverick and sprayed him in the face with some kind of liquid. Maverick screamed and backed up, scratching at his eyes. I jumped up in the blink of an eye, stood between him and her, and insisted on what was in the bottle was only vinegar and water. She snapped back with a sneer. "It won't hurt him, but maybe now he'll start obeying authority." I was completely enraged, but years of training with the military had hardened me to stay cool. Under pressure, I swallowed officers' returned face. They informed me Maverick down, washed his eyes well, and made sure that he was okay. The vinegar solution had irritated his eyes. But thank God there was no lasting damage once I knew Maverick was fine. I called the police 911. "What is your emergency?" the dispatcher asked. I told him the assault on my service animal, being sure to inform him that tampering with a service animal is a federal offense. The dispatcher took down my information and told me that officers would be dispatched right away. 20 minutes later, 2 officers knocked on my door. I described the scene, signaled them Maverick's training and certification as a service animal paperwork, and signaled Karen's apartment across the street. One of the officers stayed to take my excruciatingly detailed statement. While the other proceeded to interrogate Karen from my window, I could view her gesticulating frantically. Her face scrunched up with anger. The officer wasn't impressed with her theatrics when both that Karen had admitted to spraying Maverick, but told them she was enforcing community standards. They said to her that they had told her to leave it alone. that working with a service animal is actually a federal offense under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which has high fines and potential jail time added on top. Her conduct was animal cruelty under state statute. They were detaining her and asked if I wanted to charge her without hesitation. I said yes. Karen was cuffed and pulled into the police cruiser, yelling about what she would do to have me evicted and how everybody in the entire neighborhood would be turning against me. Some of my various neighbors had come outside to see what was happening, and I overheard one of them whispering. "She's gone too far." Another neighbor walked over to speak to me afterward, and she apologized for saying nothing at the meeting. We've all had enough bullied by her for far too long. She had admitted glancing across at Maverick, who had been spared his experience, and was once more back to his even-keel attentive self. The legal process plowed along much faster than Karen expected, being charged with interference with a service animal harassment, and cruelty. Her first court appearance was indeed a circus she made up in designer clothing, accompanied by an high-powered lawyer, who became progressively uneasy as the case against her mounted. The judge was rather stern in listening out the case, saying that rules of the community never have precedence over federal statute in particular, where it to disability accommodations as she waited trial an emergency HOA meeting was convened. I went with Maverick, and to my surprise, nearly all the residents in the community came to the vice president of the board, called for a vote of no confidence in Karen's leadership, due to her reckless conduct that has exposed our community to legal jeopardy. The vote was unanimous. Karen was removed from the board outright. Someone had even gone and printed new name tags for the board members' table, and Karen's was not there. The criminal case concluded with Karen pleading guilty to a lesser crime in place of doing a longer sentence in prison. The judge sentenced her to 30 days in the county jail, a $5,000 fine, 200 hours of community service at an animal shelter and disability rights classes because the sentence was being read. Karen's face cycle through shock anger and finally a dawning realization of the seriousness of what she had done. But I was only following the rules. She protested half-heartedly as the bath drew near. The judge leaned forward and replied, "Most important principle, Miss Whitfield, is to uphold the law of the land, which protects service animals and the people who depend on them." As Karen was being led away to begin her prison term, our eyes met briefly across the courtroom. The entitlement and arrogance which had previously marked her face were not there. Instead, the chastened look of someone who had at last stood up for a principle she could not twist or shape. She mouthed something which might have been "this isn't done," but we both knew it was Maverick settled into position beside me, smoothly, in position and intent. The very picture of the service dog professional he was, I reached down to scratch his ears, and he leaned into my hand, a minute moment of cooperation that had survived an unexpected storm and come stronger on the other side.